Thank you very much. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here, to have a chance to say a few words about the wall, and in particular the angel on the wall. The wall is no more. It fell on an eventful night in November 1989, and the world watched. Yet parts and pieces of it remain, some still standing where they were erected originally, and some have been rebuilt. They were rebuilt to ensure that the memory remains with us as a people, so that we can learn from the experience of the wall. And we know where it was, and it is even a site for various kinds of pilgrimages. You can travel around it on foot, on bike, in a car, thinking along the way about the effect of the wall. How did the people who lived on different sides feel? What were their lives? What were their stories? There is a Berlin Wall memorial that stands at Bernauer Straße, not far away. And close to it, there is a small chapel, this chapel. It's called Kapelle der Versöhnung, the Chapel of Reconciliation. And it stands at the site of a church that went by the same name, the Church of Reconciliation. And the chapel shares a relation overseas. It has a connection to the cathedral in Coventry, in England. And in it we find a so-called Coventry cross, which is made from nails that were taken from the old cathedral, used to tie beams of wood together. Now, in itself, this makes the chapel special. But there is more. On the altar of the chapel, there is a crucifix. And it shows a small and perhaps rather frail image of Christ. He is hanging. He is still alive. Now, throughout the history of the church, the Christian church, and throughout the history of theology, we have seen various interpretations of the cross, interpretations of what took place there. In the first centuries, there was this image of Christ as the lamb who was sacrificed for the sins. A bit later, the image of Christ who was the conqueror, victorious over sin and over death. In the Middle Ages, there emerged the image of Christ as the mediator, the one who steps in to pay the dues of mankind, so that the human can be forgiven, so that God and man can be reconciled. And later, in the time of the Enlightenment, there emerged the image of Christ as the ultimate teacher, the one who shows the effects of self-sacrifice. But what about the cross as a symbol? What kind of symbol is it? Well, we know that during the time of Jesus and the apostles, the cross was a symbol of oppression. It was a cruel instrument, an instrument of torture that ensued in a public death and humiliation. It was a way of sending a message: step out of bounds and this might happen to you. So why did the Christians embrace this symbol? Why did they make it the symbol of their own faith? Well, the reason is their belief that Jesus not only died on the cross, but was resurrected. A belief that inspired St. Paul to write in his letter to the Corinthians, "Where death is your victory, where death is your power to hurt." And in a similar manner, we find a passage in the Gospel of Luke where the angels say to the women who come to the tomb of Jesus, "Why are you looking among the dead for one who is alive? He is not here, he has risen." So in time, the cross became a symbol of defeat that was turned into victory. The wall is no more. It has been broken. And where it once stood, the unified city has taken over, yet parts of it remain. And they are symbolic. They represent oppression and freedom at the same time. And some parts of the wall are gray and cold, like this, and others have been decorated, some even by well-known artists, others decorated in complete freedom, maybe anarchy, covered in graffiti. And we find examples of this at Bernauerstrasse, at the memorial. And there is one such decoration that stands quite close to the Chapel of Reconciliation. And in front of the decoration, there is this monument with photographs of people who lost their lives at the wall. And people come to it. You don't see it in the photo, but they leave these little rocks to participate, I suppose. And if you look through the photos, you see the wall. But you see more. You see an angel on the wall. It is yellow, it's chubby, it looks a little bit like a small cherub, and it represents freedom. Now, just a minute's walk away is the chapel where we find Jesus nailed to the cross. And if you happen to find yourself in the chapel at dusk, when the sun is setting, something magical happens. Because the sun shining through a window casts a shadow on the wall. It's a shadow of the cross, of Jesus on the cross. But then, if you stay there for a while, for 10, 15, 20 minutes, the earth is moving and the shadow is moving. And we learn, well, maybe we learn the truth about this particular image of Christ on the cross, which is that he isn't stuck there. One of his hands has come free. And what does he do with it? He blesses. That is the message of the cross in the chapel. And it seems to me that perhaps Jesus on the cross in the Chapel of Reconciliation and the chubby angel on the wall, well, perhaps they are waving to each other. At the very least, they correspond to each other in the same manner as the cross and the wall correspond to each other. So perhaps these two, the cross and the wall, are the same, or at least similar symbols. They are symbols of pain and oppression on the one hand, and on the other hand, they are something else, something more. Their story, their significance, it doesn't end there. For they are also symbols of the fight against oppression and the victory over oppression. They are symbols of freedom and possibility, of the possibilities people like us here have to create and to live and to experience that which is greater than ourselves. So here in Berlin, at Bernauer Straße, these two important symbols meet: the religious Christian symbol of the cross and the human symbol of the wall. And they tell and share the same kind of story, a story of people who stand tall against that which seems unpassable, unsurmountable, a story of the people who stood over against violence without resorting to violence themselves, a story of people who pushed against the wall until it collapsed, until the wall became this symbol not just of oppression, but a symbol of freedom. And that is the story of the angel on the wall that I wanted to share with you today. Thank you.